Welcome everyone back to the weekly weather podcast, and in this week's podcast we're going to go across the pond and have a look at the first major tornado outbreak of the season. Now, the tornado season generally in America is from around March all the way through to around June. Tornadoes can happen all times of the year, but that's the general season as we get very cold air, so north clashing with very moist, warm air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, and it can fuel these big storm systems, massive tornadoes, and we have recently seen over the last few days a significant outbreak across the southern states of America, and we'll have a look at that in detail in this podcast. Have a look at what's caused it and some of the impacts. Have a look at some of the videos and locations of these storms as well. You might have seen some of these images and videos online as well, as they've been circulating through social media because they are pretty exceptional indeed. So we start in this podcast by having a look at the live radar. Now you can see this big area of precipitation. That is a big low pressure system that is which caused the storms to form. So you can see the centre of the low is actually out in sort of the mid or the central states, really towards the east, where some of this precipitation is through Kansas, into sort of Illinois as well. But you can see further northwards and eastwards, you can see the warm and cold fronts associated with it. Warm front here spreading through parts of Canada, and you've got the cold front, which is moving through off sort of the east coast now, and you can still see some major thunderstorms within it along this real big cold front, heading through parts of Florida now, all the way up through South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, all the way into sort of the Washington DC, New York sort of area, all the way up towards Boston as well, and significant storms within this. But the major storms that we did see, the big supercells with tornadoes, were across Texas, Louisiana, through Mississippi. These regions here saw a major tornado outbreak from this storm system as it does move through. Now, as I'm recording this, actually it's nighttime in America, so these storms will pick up as the sun does come up, giving that extra boost of energy to form. So likely to see more storms over the next day or so as this storm system does move away. So we do now have a look at the pressure charts, just to show generally what it looks like. And you can see it is this big low pressure system that's centered, as I said, towards the Great Lakes, in sort of central to northeast America, and its weather fronts associated with that. If we look at the 850 HPA temperatures, you can see down the far southeast, you've got 15-degree isotherm, real warm air pushing up. And on its western flank, you've got the -5 isotherm, so a big 20-degree difference between air masses. And that's fueling these storms, weather fronts, rain, supercells. And you can see to the north, we get snow as it clashes into the colder air, and on its southeast, we get thunderstorms. There's many different ways we can have a look at this, and you can see look at the potential equivalent temperature, which just shows the general air mass type. Warm to the southeast, very cold to the west, fueling this low pressure system. And also the thing we need to have a look at is the 500 HPA winds, and we could have a look at it throughout the whole atmosphere, but it is pretty similar, and you can see a big buckle in the jet stream diving southwards to the Gulf of Mexico, picking up all this moisture, but also got all this cold air feeding in, and that's what causes these big storm systems and tornado outbreaks. Another thing to also have a look at is the 2-meter temperature. Now, it doesn't show you anything too crazy, but you can see across central states, it's mid to low single digits. Across the far southeast, mid-20s, and that's what fuels these storms. As I said, you can see this all the way through the atmosphere. And again, looking at dew points, you can see real warm, moist air, 20-degree dew points, and then freezing or below freezing across central states and along the boundary. That's where we see storm outbreaks. And again, big thing we also have a look at is Cape, and you can see across the southeast portion of the low pressure with that real moist air, you can see major Cape values, real big Cape values, and that's fueling these supercells. And if we could have run it back a little bit, we'd see those huge Cape values transitioning from further westwards across central southern states, fueling these storms. So major storms with this. And you can see what has caused it from these temperature contrasts. Because one common misconception or misperception with storms is that it's just the heat that you need. Now, some of the driest places are the warmest places, like the Nevada Desert, Arizona, in America. Have a look across towards the Sahara, getting towards 40, 50 degrees in parts of like Saudi Arabia, UAE, those countries. Very, very hot. But you don't see that many massive thunderstorms, and it's all because they're formed by temperature contrasts. Warm air colliding with cold air, and that's why America really is a melting pot. You've got bitterly cold air to the north in Canada, especially this time of year, and to the south you've got moist hot air coming up from South America, Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico, and those collisions forms these storm systems, and that's why March to sort of June time is the peak of tornado season, because that's when the temperature contrast between the north and the south is the greatest. Still can, of course, get storms throughout July all the way to through winter as well, through summer and winter, but those temperature contrasts are not quite as big. So it's less likely, of course, to get the severe major storms and massive tornadoes. Now, of course, they are extremely destructive, and it's always good to see a low tornado count for a season, but it has started off pretty hot with the tornadoes we have seen, and we'll have a look at that in a lot of detail in a few minutes' time. But yeah, it's this temperature contrast that really does fuel these storms. So that is, again, one misconception. Do want to get out of the way, because a lot of people do think just hot temperatures brings storms. You can have 15-degree temperatures and you get massive supercells, and it's all because of temperature contrasts, and that's why sometimes in the UK we get our liveliest weather through sort of early spring and even in the winter, when we get real cold air masses colliding with warmer air from the south, fueling storm systems, and that's why we get big major storms that we saw in February for the UK, and that's why we can even see thunderstorms, big showers in winter as well. So, yeah, one big misconception, and you can see why sometimes people think like that. But you can see for America, it's that temperature contrast which is really fueling these storms. Now, if we have a look at some more satellite data, you can see the infrared here, showing the cloud top heights. And you can see the big swirl of cloud. This is the low pressure system centered over the Great Lakes. You can see the big clouds, and you can see these white specks. Those are lightning strikes, and there's about 771 in this frame, this sort of 5 to 10 minute frame, all the way up the southeast corner of America, and that has transitioned, of course, from the west. This doesn't show it as well, the cold front, as we'll see in a minute, with the water vapor, which shows it really quite amazing. But again, when these supercells do fire off once again in the afternoon, and these storms fire off once we get the sun coming up, we're likely to see it go much more red, even getting towards potentially white and purples, and those sort of levels you just normally see with sort of hurricanes, and we could be seeing that with some of these storms as well as they do form. Now, if we also have a look, as I said, at the water vapor, which is very cool. Have a look at this. Now, you can see, it's difficult to actually make out. You can see the lighter blue, that's the sort of the borders. Dark blues, that is a lot of moisture, and reds is a little amount of moisture. And you can see, again, dry, cold air, dry slot behind the cold front is red, and then you can see real moist air to the right. It's blues, and you can see this real distinct line running down eastern states of America, and that is the cold front, and there'll be a 10 degree temperature drop across that, and that's why we see these massive storms developing. You get dry slots with the warm moist air, and that's where you start to see rotation in storms, supercells form, tornadoes form. So you can see this really well represented on this chart. It's very quite amazing, really, seeing the dry slots collide with the water vapor, or increased amount of water vapor, and that forms these incredible storms that of course are highly dangerous, but from a sort of a meteorological point are truly exceptional. So we can see what has caused these storms. You can see how they've come about and what sort of scenario you need and what it looks like really on the satellite charts. But now we'll have a look at what actually happened with these storms, some of the images from it, and of course actually have a look at some data for it as well on the ground. So if we do go over to Twitter, which is the best, really the best place, to be honest, to be getting all of this information, because it gets spread very quickly. So you can see from the 22nd of March, only a few days ago, traffic cam belonged to ABC, took a direct hit from a tornado in Round Rock, Texas, about 20 miles north of Austin, which is close to the Mexico border. So if we do quickly play it, you can see within this big spiral of precipitation, you can see the tornado in there, those darker greys. Moving through. Significant storm. There have been loads of tornadoes, so this is just one of many, and you can see how it is moving towards the traffic camera, and you can see all those wind gusts. You can see 100 mile per hour wind gusts within this easily as it does move through. A lot of you can see that getting knocked over and pushed around, and you can see there's a lot of shrapnel, sort of debris within the tornado, and eventually it will move through quite quickly, but bringing a lot of disruption. Now you can see here another tornado, violent tornado, and it's again in Round Rock, Texas. So it's either that same tornado or another one formed by a storm nearby. And you can see there's a car there, this red car that's got intertwined within that tornado. If we do run it back, and it it stays. Luckily, the tornado isn't strong enough, so it stays stationary. It gets moved about a bit, but luckily is able to just drive off as if nothing happened. Truly exceptional. And again, it's one of these situations where you just stay away from the tornado. Luckily, we don't see this a lot in the UK, this sort of scenario. But if you ever are in the unfortunate situation of being near tornadoes, stay indoors, get down into a basement. Or if you are out and about, stay away from the tornado. If the tornado doesn't look like it's moving, it's either moving towards you or moving away from you. And that's a 50-50. So again, stay away from tornadoes. They are very, very dangerous. I know this is pretty trivial, me saying this, but you can see by this sort of scenario, someone has not taken the necessary precautions and has fortunately got trapped within one. Now you can see another major tornado outbreak that's hit the news significantly was through New Orleans, a multi-vortex tornado. You can see, if we just pause it there, multiple funnels, very complex physics going on with this. Way too difficult for me to explain really in this podcast. But yeah, a multi-vortex tornado with multiple spirals through it, and it just shows you the complexion of these systems with a sort of a mother funnel and then a small little daughter funnel coming off it. And it's very dangerous being at night as well. It's very difficult to see it, and of course lightning and sort of street lights are able to sort of show these a little bit better. But once again, very, very dangerous moving through New Orleans. If we see another video, this is again this New Orleans tornado. Again, lightning able to light up the sky. If we do run it back briefly, you can see the tornado there. Could even be a bit of a water spout here as well. Again, water spout is a tornado just over water. So a bit of a mix of a tornado water spout here, because of course New Orleans is very, it's got a lot of water around it. And you see along the Mississippi River with a cruise ship nearby. That must be absolutely ominous, this image here. Really quite terrifying with that as it doesn't move through. And if we just do run the video on it a little bit longer, you can see the cruise ship is getting away from it, and you can see that tornado there moving over the land. But yeah, big tornado scene there. Now, if we do move up, this is some data from that New Orleans tornado, and you can see unclear where touchdown occurred, but likely around 7:20 p.m. on the ground for about 10 minutes. And tornado lifted, but likely around 7:40. So not long lasting. You can see damage sort of area is quite small, but it's very, very high damage within that area. And you can see looks at least an EF2 with an EFT3 tornado potentially with 130 miles per hour. And again, some and reanalysis of it will, of course, decide that. And of course, if you don't know the EF scale, EF1 all the way to EF5. So EF5 being extremely destructive, life-threatening, could kill tens, if not hundreds of people. Would flatten the ground. So it's sort of a middle to strong tornado, this that we just seen heading through central parts of New Orleans, and you can see there where it was across the Hudson River where that cruise ship was. So yeah, really quite exceptional. And again, this is another general image of 118 tornado warnings across 6 states in almost 3 days, and quite the kickoff to the spring severe season. So you can see all the way across Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. all the way through sort of Houston, Dallas, Jackson, New Orleans, all these areas, and you can see where the storm's moving, all moving northeastwards, and you can see those cones moving, and you can see individual supercells sort of forming, reforming, bringing these lines of warnings. So yeah, very, very severe conditions. And this won't be the last of it for the season. This is just the first major outbreak of the season, and we're likely to see more over the coming days and coming weeks, as well as these storm systems do continue to develop. In a lucky season, we won't see too much of these sort of scenarios, but it has kicked off quite a bang this season, especially with these major tornadoes being in highly populated areas like New Orleans, because sometimes you can see these tornadoes and they form in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't impact anyone, doesn't hit the news at all, and is not impactful at all, but this hits central downtown New Orleans. So yeah, hit the news a bit more, and just shows you how luck really does play a lot of part within these tornadoes. As I said, if they form in the middle of nowhere over some field somewhere, no one really cares too much. But if they form over highly populated areas, can cause a lot of damage. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't see too many severe tornadoes this season. If they do form, they form in the middle of nowhere, as I said. But we have seen a severe tornado outbreak. It will likely continue over the next few weeks and the next few months. And again, I just pray for anyone out there in the southern and central states throughout Tornado Alley that it, again, is a below average season. As, of course, a lot of people out there have learned to deal with it, but regardless, it is devastating when we do see these severe impacts from these tornadoes, and it's just another unfortunate event we do see. Luckily, as I said, for the UK, we don't see anything too severe like this. Another interesting fact that I've probably said in a video before, that actually the UK per square mile has more tornadoes than America. But again, for the UK, it's very much more likely to just be very minor vortexes that don't cause any disruption at all. I saw last time we saw a tornado just to northeast of London, where we did see some bins go flying. But again, all it did was topple a few brick walls, nothing too severe, a bit of damage, but nothing on the scale of anything we see in America. So very much the UK is lucky in that terms and in that regards, but for the time being, just hope for America that we again see not too much severe damage from this upcoming tornado season, because of course once the tornado season finishes in June, then we start to head into the hurricane season. So yeah, not a great 6 months coming up for people living in the southeast and southern parts of America. But fingers crossed, nothing is too bad. But of course, this does happen every year, so people do get used to it. But of course, we every year hope that we do see a below average season. So anyway, thanks for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed having a look at this latest tornado outbreak, the first severe outbreak of the season. And as I said, hopefully we don't see anything too severe coming up this season throughout America. So yeah. So anyway, of course, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I'll see you again for another video, another podcast soon.